Okay, I'm going to talk about well drilling. I'm going to try and go quickly. But okay, so I worked as a well driller for about 2 months in Idaho, and then I've helped out on several. Oh, sorry. That way I don't have to hunch over. And I've helped out with several wells in Utah as well, so I'm definitely not an expert, but I tried to learn as much as I could when I was doing that. So there's a few different things I want to talk about real briefly. One is just the basic process of drilling a well and what that consists of, and then the next one is like I guess the impediments and difficulties to take into consideration about well drilling. And then the third one is kind of the reason why I got into well drilling in the first place, is because I was interested in what's down there under the ground and the different layers and stuff that you're drilling through, and where the water's at and the pressure and all that kind of stuff, which I could probably talk about that for a lot more time than I have, so I'm going to try and make it quick. So the basic process of drilling a well, so there's water under the ground, you want to get to it. So basically you get a drill rig in there. It's got a great big compressor and a drill bit, and basically it drills down in the air, the compressed air, or sometimes it'll be pumping water, pumping mud, which will lift the dirt and rocks out as the bit drills. There's different processes depending on what it is you're drilling through. But basically, usually you drill a 6-inch hole, or well, about 7 inches, and put in 6-inch steel pipe. It's called casing. You can also use PVC sometimes. And basically that becomes your well, let's say 200 or 600 feet down, however deep you need to put it to get to a good patch of water. And then that hole with the casing becomes your well. You put a pump down there with another pipe, and then you got water. So that's the basic process. The biggest impediment or difficulty or whatever is cost, especially if, well, so I think right now they're charging in the ballpark of $100 a foot. So if you have to go 200 feet or 600 feet, it gets expensive. The equipment for doing it is also quite expensive. This is where this is kind of different than a lot of the other presentations. It's not so much something that you can easily just do yourself, because I mean, old broken down rig is going to be like $100,000. That's like good enough to work, but not very good. And a nice new rig is going to be like $1 million. So basically, the equipment costs as much as a house, so there's a little bit of barrier to entry that way. Another thing is state regulations. You have to be licensed, at least to do it legally. If you don't get caught, then I guess you can do whatever you want. But you have to get water rights. You have to follow seal procedures, like different regulations for how the well is supposed to be built. That's probably something you'd want to do anyway, because the seal procedure is because you don't want things from up top getting down in the well, especially any kind of manure or anything. So there's procedures for having the top 20 to 40 feet sealed real good, so you don't have like rainwater or anything washing stuff down the side of the well, like outside the casing or anything. That's actually another one of the things to take into consideration, because basically the ways that wells can go bad is usually if it dries up, or if it gets contaminated, or I guess if the pump fails, but you can fix that, you can replace that, or if there's an earthquake or something. So contamination and water table fluctuation are the main ones you want to take in consideration. So for water table fluctuation, you want to drill significantly below the surface of the water, and then for contamination, then it's basically that seal procedure and just being careful, and hope that your neighbors also be careful. Okay, and then for the, got a few minutes left. For the what's underneath the ground. So when I was drilling up in Idaho, there was two main types of terrain we were drilling. One type of well, it was in the Snake River Valley Plain. There was a lot of, well, the first layer was like dirt and stuff, but then there's layers of like gravelly stuff and then lava rock. So basically we would drill down about 120 feet, go through a couple layers of lava rock, and then stop in a spot of gravel with good water, and we'd get plenty of water from that. In the other type of area we were drilling up in Idaho was it had more variety, more of a mountainy area, so we're drilling through a lot of rock. And in that case, you run into some interesting things. Sometimes you'll hit like a crack in the rock where, actually, in one of the presentations earlier this morning, they were playing a video, and he talked about that his driller, when he was drilling, the bit dropped 40 feet. So there was like a cavern down there. I've never seen a bit drop 40 feet, but I've seen where it, like you're drilling and then stops drilling and just lowers for like 5 feet or something, because there's porosity in the ground, there's caverns, there's spaces, there's cracks. One of the problems I didn't talk about was if you hit a crack that's kind of at an angle and you're drilling through, when it hits the other side of the crack, it can try and make it go sideways. That can be a big problem. Also, if there's a lot of boulders down there, that can also kind of divert the bit. The wells I was helping out with in Utah were kind of similar to the gravel wells in Idaho, except there wasn't so much of the lava rock layers. There was like some clay layers and some sand and stuff. The interesting thing there was one of the wells there had hit like a vein of salt or something. So there was salt water coming out of the well. So they ended up having to drill it deeper to get past the salt water, because I mean, it was salty enough you could taste it when it was coming out, which is, I think it's pretty uncommon. But another thing, down underneath the ground, there'll be pressure. So whether it's air or water, pressure builds up under the ground. Usually there's not enough pressure to take the water all the way out to the top of the well. But when there is, it's called an artesian well. Sometimes there'll be air pressure down there too. I remember one of the wells we were drilling in the Rocky area up in Idaho. We stopped at one point and there was just like air blowing out of the well. And the guy I was drilling with says on some wells, I mean, it'll be enough you can put a hat over the top of the casing and it'll just blow it up in the air. Like so much air blowing out of the well. So it's kind of interesting. There's different temperatures down there. Some areas you can do geothermal heating just from the hot water down underneath the ground. If you're using a heat pump, you can do geothermal just from the regular water. But I'm probably about out of time, so let me think if there's anything else. No, I think that's about all I had in mind to say. So I guess if you have more questions, my booth's over there. I guess there's one question that everyone is going to ask, which is like, how do you pick where to drill? I haven't ever been involved in actually making that decision, but like people talk about dousing and well witching, and people still do that. I think my great grandpa used to do that. I've never done it or seen it done, but I've drilled. I mean, usually the customers pick where the well goes, and sometimes the customers will hire someone to do that for them. But yeah, so that's about all I've got for now. So thanks.